A new era, Trump's second term, and the future of U.S. China relations. As the world watches, the dynamics between these two superpowers are set to evolve in ways that could reshape global politics. The 2024 U.S. presidential election sent shockwaves across the globe as Donald Trump returned to the White House for a second term. His re-election was met with a mix of jubilation and trepidation, reflecting the polarized nature of his leadership. For China, the outcome reignited anxieties about the future of U.S.-China relations. The Chinese government and its analysts were quick to assess the potential impacts of Trump's renewed leadership on their strategic interests. The relationship between the world's two largest economies had already been strained during Trump's first term. Trade wars, tariffs, and mutual distrust had set the stage for a complex and often contentious interaction. Now, Chinese analysts grappled with the implications of another 4 years under his leadership. They pondered over the potential economic policies, military strategies, and diplomatic maneuvers that could unfold. Would Trump's second term bring further turbulence to the relationship? The possibility of increased tensions loomed large, with concerns about escalating conflicts in trade, technology, and territorial disputes. Or could it offer an unexpected opportunity for cooperation? Some analysts speculated that a second term might bring a more pragmatic approach, focusing on areas where mutual interests align. The global community watched with bated breath, eager to understand how the U.S. and China would navigate their complex and increasingly fraught relationship. Media outlets around the world provided continuous coverage, analyzing every move and statement from both sides. The stakes were high, as the actions of these two superpowers had profound implications for the world. Their decisions could influence global markets, international security, and the overall stability of the international order. From trade and technology to security and global governance, the future seemed uncertain. The interconnected nature of the global economy meant that any significant shift in U.S.-China relations would have ripple effects worldwide. This essay delves into the perspectives of Chinese analysts on the future of U.S.-China relations in the wake of Trump's second term. It seeks to uncover the underlying concerns, hopes, and strategies that shape their outlook. It examines the key events and policies that have shaped the relationship, highlighting the sources of tension and potential areas for cooperation. By tracing the historical context, we can better understand the current dynamics and future possibilities. By understanding the Chinese perspective, we can gain valuable insights into the complexities of this critical bilateral relationship. The views of Chinese scholars, policymakers, and business leaders provide a nuanced picture of the challenges and opportunities ahead. This analysis will explore the potential paths forward for the U.S. and China, shedding light on the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It will consider scenarios ranging from heightened conflict to renewed cooperation, and everything in between. The future of the international order may very well hinge on their ability to find common ground and manage their differences responsibly. As the world watches, the actions of these two nations will be pivotal in shaping the 21st century. The history of U.S.-China relations is marked by periods of both collaboration and conflict. Understanding this history is crucial for predicting future trends and preparing for the challenges that lie ahead. As citizens of the world, we all have a stake in the outcome of this relationship. The economic, political, and social ramifications of U.S.-China interactions will touch lives far beyond their borders. Beyond politics and economics, the relationship also encompasses cultural and scientific exchanges. These areas offer a glimmer of hope for building mutual understanding and respect. Diplomatic efforts will be crucial in navigating this complex relationship. The ability of both nations to engage in constructive dialogue and negotiate in good faith will determine the trajectory of their interactions. Ultimately, the future of U.S.-China relations will be shaped by the actions and attitudes of both governments and their people. It is a story still being written, with each chapter offering new challenges and opportunities. As we look to the future, we must remain hopeful and vigilant, recognizing that the path forward will require wisdom, patience, and a commitment to peace and prosperity for all. The first term, a relationship tested. Donald Trump's first term was a tumultuous period in U.S.-China relations. The dynamics between the two superpowers were already fraught with tension, but the arrival of Trump in the White House marked a significant shift. The relationship, already marked by competition and mistrust, faced unprecedented challenges as Trump pursued an aggressive America First agenda. This approach aimed to prioritize American interests, often at the expense of international cooperation. Trade became a central battleground, with the U.S. imposing tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. These tariffs were intended to reduce the trade deficit and pressure China into changing its trade practices. China retaliated in kind, leading to a bitter trade war that rattled global markets. The tit-for-tat tariffs created uncertainty for businesses and investors, causing stock markets to fluctuate wildly. Beyond trade, tensions flared on multiple fronts. The geopolitical landscape became increasingly complex as both nations sought to assert their influence. The U.S. challenged China's assertive actions in the South China Sea, increasing military presence and conducting freedom of navigation operations. These operations were designed to counter China's territorial claims and ensure open sea lanes. Washington also criticized Beijing's human rights record, particularly its treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province. Reports of mass detentions and surveillance drew international condemnation. The Trump administration also took aim at Chinese tech companies like Huawei, accusing them of posing national security risks and seeking to limit their global reach. This included banning Huawei from participating in the development of 5G networks in the U.S. and pressuring allies to do the same. These developments left a lasting impact on U.S. China relations, eroding trust and deepening existing divisions. The once cautious engagement had given way to open rivalry. The relationship, once characterized by cautious engagement, had entered a new phase of strategic competition. Both nations were now locked in a struggle for global influence and technological supremacy. Chinese analysts looked back at Trump's first term with a mix of frustration and apprehension, uncertain of what to expect from his second term. The unpredictability of U.S. policy made it difficult for China to formulate a long-term strategy. The escalation of tensions had real consequences for both countries. Factories closed, supply chains were disrupted, and businesses faced increased costs. The trade war hurt businesses and consumers on both sides of the Pacific. Higher tariffs meant higher prices for goods, affecting everything from electronics to everyday household items. The heightened military activity in the South China Sea raised the risk of miscalculation and conflict. Both nations conducted military exercises, increasing the chances of an accidental confrontation. And the breakdown of dialogue and cooperation made it more difficult to address shared global challenges like climate change and pandemics. The lack of collaboration hindered efforts to find common solutions to these pressing issues. The COVID-19 pandemic further strained relations, with both countries blaming each other for the virus's spread. This blame game overshadowed the need for a coordinated global response. Despite these challenges, there were moments of attempted diplomacy. Trade negotiations took place, and there were efforts to find common ground on certain issues. However, these efforts were often overshadowed by the broader strategic competition. The underlying mistrust and rivalry made sustained cooperation difficult. As the world watched, the U.S. China relationship continued to evolve. The actions taken during Trump's first term set the stage for future interactions, shaping the geopolitical landscape for years to come. The legacy of this period is one of heightened competition and deepened divisions, with both nations navigating a complex and uncertain future. A cloud of pessimism, Chinese analysts, and the road ahead. As Trump embarked on his second term, a sense of pessimism pervaded the Chinese analytical community. The analysts, who had been closely monitoring the developments in U.S. China relations, were increasingly concerned about the future trajectory of these critical bilateral ties. Many experts believed that U.S. China relations were likely to deteriorate further. The prevailing sentiment was one of caution and apprehension, as the analysts tried to navigate the complexities of an increasingly adversarial relationship. They pointed to several factors contributing to this bleak outlook. The analysts meticulously reviewed data, charts, and historical trends to understand the underlying causes of the growing tensions. First, they argued that Trump's America First worldview remained deeply ingrained. This approach, which prioritized American interests above all else, often came at the expense of international cooperation and diplomacy. This worldview, they argued, viewed China as a strategic competitor and even an adversary, rather than a potential partner. The rhetoric from the Trump administration consistently framed China as a threat to American economic and national security. Second, Chinese analysts expressed concerns about the growing influence of anti-China hawks within the Trump administration. These hawks, known for their hardline stance, were gaining more power and influence, shaping policies that were increasingly confrontational. These individuals, they feared, would push for even more confrontational policies towards China. The analysts worried that this would lead to a cycle of retaliation and escalation, further straining the already fragile relationship. Third, there was a growing sense among Chinese experts that the U.S. was becoming increasingly wary of China's rise. The rapid economic and technological advancements made by China were seen as a direct challenge to American global dominance. They pointed to bipartisan support for a tougher stance on China and Washington as evidence of this trend. Both Republicans and Democrats seemed united in their desire to counter China's growing influence, making it a rare point of agreement in an otherwise polarized political landscape. This hardening of attitudes, they feared, would make it difficult to find common ground and manage differences peacefully. The analysts were concerned that the lack of diplomatic engagement and mutual understanding would lead to more conflicts and misunderstandings. The pessimism among Chinese analysts was not without foundation. Their concerns were rooted in a careful analysis of recent events and policy decisions, which painted a grim picture of the future. Trump's first term had demonstrated his willingness to upend established norms and pursue unilateral action, often with little regard for the consequences. His unpredictable and often aggressive approach to foreign policy had already caused significant disruptions. The trade war, the military buildup in the South China Sea, and the attacks on Chinese tech companies all pointed to a more assertive and confrontational approach towards China. These actions had far-reaching implications affecting not just the two countries involved, but the entire global economy and geopolitical landscape. The analysts continued to monitor the situation closely, aware that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. They knew that finding a path to de-escalation and cooperation would require significant effort and strategic thinking. Despite the prevailing pessimism, there were still voices advocating for dialogue and engagement. Some analysts believed that through careful negotiation and mutual concessions, it might be possible to stabilize the relationship and avoid further deterioration. The road ahead was uncertain, but the analysts remained committed to their work, hoping to find solutions that would benefit both nations and contribute to global stability. Their insights and recommendations would play a crucial role in shaping the future of U.S. China relations. As they looked to the future, the Chinese analysts understood that the stakes were high. The decisions made in the coming years would have profound implications not just for China and the United States, but for the entire world. With determination and a deep sense of responsibility, they continued their work, striving to navigate the complexities of international relations and find a path forward in these challenging times.